Uniwersytet Łódzki kończy 76 lat. Wciąż jesteśmy uczelnią młodą, ale mamy za sobą wiele doświadczeń, z których jesteśmy dumni. Pamiętając o tym, że w przeszłości zmienialiśmy historię, odważnie patrzymy w przyszłość. Dążąc do doskonałości w nauce i dydaktyce, stale rozwijamy nasz potencjał. Prowadzimy badania służące społeczeństwu dziś i w przyszłości. Kształcimy odpowiedzialnych obywateli. Konsekwentnie zmieniamy świat na lepszy. Siłę czerpiemy z różnorodności. Fundamentem naszych działań jest szacunek. Inspirujemy do twórczego dialogu i podważania status quo. Z radością przyjmujemy do naszej społeczności coraz więcej studentów i naukowców z całego świata. Z okazji naszego jubileuszu społeczności i przyjaciołom Uniwersytetu Łódzkiego życzymy ciekawości, która pozwala uwolnić umysł i szukać prawdy o świecie zgodnie z naszym mottem Veritas et Libertas – prawda i wolność. Dziękujemy, że jesteście Państwo dziś z nami.
Proszę o odtworzenie hymnu państwowego. Szanowni Państwo, otwieram uroczyste posiedzenie Senatu Uniwersytetu Łódzkiego z okazji 76. rocznicy utworzenia uczelni, podczas którego wręczę panu przewodniczącemu Hermanowi Van Rompuyowi tytuł doktora honoris causa Uniwersytetu Łódzkiego. Bardzo proszę o zajęcie miejsc. Wysoki Senacie, Szanowni Państwo, mam zaszczyt w imieniu władz uczelni powitać uczestniczących w dzisiejszej uroczystości dostojnych gości. Szczególnie serdeczne słowa powitania kieruję do pana przewodniczącego Hermana Van Rompuya, któremu będę miała zaszczyt wręczyć dyplom doktora honoris causa Uniwersytetu Łódzkiego. Bardzo serdecznie witam zgromadzonych na miejscu gości, promotora, pana profesora Rafała Materę, dziekana Wydziału Ekonomiczno-Socjologicznego, pana profesora Ryszarda Piaseckiego z Uniwersytetu Łódzkiego, jednego z recenzentów dorobku pana przewodniczącego Hermana Van Rompuya. Witam pana profesora Antoniego Różalskiego, poprzedniego rektora Uniwersytetu Łódzkiego. Witam oczywiście wszystkich Państwa uczestniczących w naszej uroczystości, tym razem uczestniczących online. Szczególnie recenzentów dorobku pana przewodniczącego, pana profesora Romana Kuźniara z Uniwersytetu Warszawskiego i pana profesora doktora Wolfganga Wesselsa z Uniwersytetu w Kolonii oraz wszystkich przedstawicieli władz, w tym województwa łódzkiego i miasta Łodzi. Witam naszych byłych rektorów oraz rektorów innych łódzkich uczelni, członków Rady Uniwersytetu Łódzkiego, absolwentów WIP, pracowników i młodzież akademicką naszej uczelni oraz wszystkich naszych przyjaciół. Uniwersytet Łódzki jest wspólnotą. Często powtarzamy to stwierdzenie, zawsze powtarzając, jesteśmy z niego dumni, ale dzisiaj w kontekście wręczenia doktoratu honoris causa panu przewodniczącemu Hermanowi Van Rompuyowi ma ono znaczenie wyjątkowe. Dzisiaj wręczamy ten tytuł człowiekowi, który przez wiele lat, jak sam mówił, o wspólnotę walczył, najpierw o tę w swojej ojczyźnie, a następnie o wspólnotę europejską, o tę drugą w czasie wielkiego kryzysu gospodarczego. Inny wielki kryzys, pandemię, przeżywaliśmy przez ostatni rok, wciąż z niego wychodzimy. Mówiąc nas, mam na myśli zarówno naszą wspólnotę akademicką, nasz kraj, Polskę, Europę, cały świat. Chciałam, korzystając z tej okazji, serdecznie podziękować społeczności akademickiej Uniwersytetu Łódzkiego za to, że wspólnie udało nam się ten najtrudniejszy, mam nadzieję, moment pokonać i zachować bardzo dobrą kondycję całej Akademii. Wiem, że kosztowało to Państwa wiele wysiłku, ale zapewniam, że możemy być dumni z tego, jak umieliśmy sobie pomagać, wspierać się w ciężkich chwilach i szybko przeorganizować nasze życie tak, by wciąż sprawnie i dobrze funkcjonować. Uniwersytet Łódzki okazał się wspólnotą silną i jest to Państwa zasługa, nauczycieli akademickich, pracowników naukowych, administracyjnych, doktorantów, studentów, absolwentów, jak również naszych przyjaciół, wszystkich instytucji i osób, które w tym czasie z nami współpracowały, bo przecież wspólnoty też muszą współpracować ze sobą. Szanowny Panie Przewodniczący, dziś mam zaszczyt zaprosić Pana do naszej wspólnoty, otwartej na Europę, konsekwentnie budującej swój potencjał naukowy, tolerancyjnej, mającej w swoich szeregach studentów i naukowców z niemal 100 krajów, w tym również z Belgii, wciąż poszukującej nowych przyjaciół i dróg rozwoju. Mam nadzieję, że jak najszybciej odwiedzi nas Pan osobiście, żeby się o tym przekonać, żebyśmy mogli się osobiście spotkać. Wszystkiego dobrego życząc, dziękuję bardzo Państwu. Wysoki Senacie, Szanowni Państwo, Senat Uniwersytetu Łódzkiego uchwałą nr 714 z dnia 18 maja 2020 roku nadał panu Hermanowi Van Rompuyowi najwyższą godność uniwersytecką, tytuł doktora honoris causa Uniwersytetu Łódzkiego. Z recenzji przesłanych przez recenzentów czytamy, w tych recenzjach czytamy: największym osiągnięciem Van Rompuya dla akademickiego świata jest to, że był on i jest w pełni i głęboko zaangażowany, aby służyć na wiele sposobów jako pomost między areną polityczną a naszą wieżą z kości słoniowej. W swoich publikacjach oraz na wielu konferencjach i warsztatach był i jest bardzo cennym źródłem prac naukowych. Jego obszerna refleksja, choć nie była kontynuowana w szkołach akademickich, była i jest w pozytywnym sensie prowokująca i konstruktywna. Jego liczne publikacje na temat integracji europejskiej, finansów międzynarodowych i stosunków międzynarodowych są na najwyższym poziomie naukowym i stanowią wyraz troski o realizację idei takiej Europy, która powinna odgrywać wiodącą rolę jak w epoce odrodzenia, w promowaniu wartości humanizmu europejskiego, demokracji, społecznej gospodarki rynkowej oraz w skutecznym stawianiu czoła wyzwaniom klimatycznym i ochronie środowiska naturalnego. Tyle z recenzji. Recenzentami w przewodzie o nadanie tytułu doktora honoris causa Uniwersytetu Łódzkiego byli profesor dr Wolfgang Wessels z Uniwersytetu w Kolonii, profesor Roman Kuźniar z Uniwersytetu Warszawskiego, profesor dr habilitowany Ryszard Piasecki z Uniwersytetu Łódzkiego. Bardzo proszę pana profesora Rafała Materę, promotora w tym przewodzie o nadanie tytułu doktora honoris causa Uniwersytetu Łódzkiego o wygłoszenie laudacji.
Dear Rector, dear President, dear reviewers, dear professors, dear students, dear guests, friends of University of Łódź. The fundamental reasons for awarding Herman Van Rompuy with the honoris causa degree are to recognize his contribution to the development of European integration and to appreciate the exceptional role he played in the political and social life of European countries at a difficult time of economic crisis. This practical dimension is related to the unique role of the politician and intellectual in the life of European societies and economies, including Poland. This approach fits perfectly into the research area of the social sciences and humanities. We award this doctorate to an advocate of sustainable development in a united Europe. And sustainable development is possible when politics is predictable, the economy is stable, and society is aware of their rights. One of the fathers of United Europe, Jean Monnet, in a speech in Washington in 1952, defined European integration as bringing together not only states but also people. Thanks to his personality, integrity, hard work, perseverance, and willingness to make compromises, Herman Van Rompuy has, as politician and a leader, fully implemented Monnet's postulate. Serving Europe at a difficult time of financial, economic, and political crisis, he left it united and in solidarity, facing up to temporary difficulties. Herman Van Rompuy was born in 1947 in Etterbeek, Belgium, in the Brussels capital region. In 1965, he graduated from the College of St. John Berkmans in Brussels. 3 years later, he obtained a bachelor's degree in philosophy at the oldest Belgian university, the Catholic University of Leuven. In 1971, he obtained a master's degree in economics at the same university. Immediately after graduation, he worked in the administration of the National Bank of Belgium, while also being actively involved in the Belgian Christian People's Party. From 1978, he remained in the party's highest leadership and held a responsible political position. He was an advisor in the Belgian cabinets and cooperated with finance ministers. He held the position of Secretary of State for Finance and Small and Medium Enterprises. He was also Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of the Budget. From the mid-1990s, Herman Van Rompuy was a member of the Belgian House of Representatives. He was also elected to Parliament in 1999, 2003, and 2007. During the political crisis in Belgium in 2007, King Albert II asked him to negotiate a coalition to form a government and to reach an agreement between the Wallon and Flemish parties. Thanks to his successful negotiations, the mission of forming a government was succeeded. However, another political crisis made it necessary to look for a new head of the government. This time, the person in charge of the negotiations, Wilfried Martens, asked Herman Van Rompuy to take over the responsibility for governing the country. He managed to agree with the leaders of the 5 political parties forming the coalition, and a new government could be sworn in. Becoming Prime Minister of Belgium in 2008, was the crowning domestic political activity of our honorary doctor. Throughout his political activity, Herman Van Rompuy was also active in academic and cultural life. He was a director of Center for Political, Economic and Social Studies and worked as a professor at the Handels Hogeschool in Antwerp. And after his presidency, he was a professor of the University of Leuven and the College of Europe in Bruges. His most important works, not only scientific, but also in the field of poetry, include following titles: Changing Time, Hope After 1984, Christianity, Modern Thought, Through an Azure Door, Evening Without Politics, Europe in the Storm, and volumes of poems Haiku. The year 2009 marked in the beginning of a new phase in Herman Van Rompuy's life, a phase that goes beyond Belgian history, affecting the history of Europe. In November 2009, he was elected the President of the European Council, taking office on the 1st of December 2009, and serving 2 terms until November 2014. Herman Van Rompuy's policy has been to strengthen EU institutions. He proved to be a person with great organizational and conciliatory skills. He has maintained good relations with national and European leaders, even during the deepest economic downturn and rising political tension in Europe. At the most difficult moments in our recent history, the EU has been able to count on a solid and predictable leader. Faced with difficult choices, Herman Van Rompuy was a president of and for all. He considered different views and sought common ground between Eurozone and non-Eurozone member states. Herman Van Rompuy's political motto was that in the economic and monetary union, being responsible meant that each country should conduct a sound financial policy and take into account the impact of its own actions on the economies and of the other countries. Solidarity meant that nobody should close their eyes when another country was in crisis and be ready to rush to help. Herman Van Rompuy's qualities of empathy, discretion, patience, drive to find common ground, and political skills such as the ability to build trust and reach agreements helped him meet the demands of this difficult service. The key to success in dealing with national leaders was to work together as closely as possible and to slowly but persistently forge consensus. He himself has said that the most important values for the President of the European Council are dialogue, unity, and working to build trust. Herman Van Rompuy also saw the strong EU response to the Ukrainian crisis, triggered by Russia's annexation of Crimea, which took place in 2014, the final year of his second term. As the situation in Ukraine rapidly deteriorated, Herman Van Rompuy became personally involved in the issue of imposing sanctions of Russia. After the downing of the Malaysian airliner in July 2014, he played a key role in ensuring a swift action, asking national leaders to instruct permanent representatives to agree to implement sanctions immediately. His sense of responsibility to represent the Union externally should also be noted. Herman Van Rompuy has performed this role brilliantly. He has represented the Union in multilateral fora, such as the G8 or the G20, deepened the dialogue with the strategic partners, completed the enlargement of the Union with Croatia in 2013, and conducted the dialogue with the remaining Balkan countries. He has always stressed that despite the economic and financial crisis, Europe cannot close it on itself, and the admission of new members must continue. Herman Van Rompuy also conveyed the message that Europe is a heritage of values, principles, and freedom. He warned against the danger of populism. According to him, Europe must become a community, Europe that protects and does not leave its citizens in difficulty, a Europe that fights unemployment, a Europe able to face global challenges. In a deeper sense, when we praise Herman Van Rompuy, we are really praising a European ideal. During his presidency, he actually reinvented the European Council, gave it a clear character and a solid foundation based on dialogue, unity, and effectiveness. Jean Monnet, who has already been mentioned, also said that nothing can come into being without people, but nothing can last without institutions. Indeed, Herman Van Rompuy has upheld the great values of the European Union and put it on the path to further continuity and development. How long will this mission last? That will depend on the successor of Herman Van Rompuy's policy. On the very first page of Donald Tusk's diaries, in the very first paragraph, the author quotes Herman Van Rompuy, who was to be surprised when he learned that his successor was publishing a diary so soon after finishing his term of office. Why are you doing this? It's very risky. You will regret it. I don't know if Donald Tusk regrets publishing the diaries, but he certainly should not regret continuing Herman Van Rompuy's policy, which was to build an open, diverse, and tolerant Europe. As researchers and teachers, together with our students, we would like to follow such a path together with sensible and involved European leaders. Poles are still Euro enthusiasts. Surveys by most opinion centers confirm this fact. More than 2/3 of Poles believe that their voice counts in the European Union. Nearly 90% are the opinion that Poland benefits from membership in the European Union. So we are not giving in the Eurosceptics narration. Yet we do not know what will happen in a few years' time. Newest polls and surveys on confidence to European Union are not so optimistic as mentioned above. Only half Polish citizens trust EU. That's why we need to listen to such political and social leaders as Herman Van Rompuy. We need to recall their contribution to the development of the common Europe. I would like to thank President for agreeing to join the group of doctors honoris causa of University of Łódź. Thank you for your attention.
Proszę Państwa o powstanie. Pana promotora proszę o odczytanie dyplomu.
Quod felix Faustum fortunatum quesit, summis auspicis, serenissime rei publice Polonorum, nos Antonius Różalski, scientiarum naturalium doctor, microbiologicarum doctrinarum professor ordinarius, Universitatis Lodziensis, hoc tempore rector magnificus. Rafael Matera, economicarum disciplinarum doctor, Universitatis Lodziensis professor, scientiarum economicarum et socialium ordinis, hoc tempore decanus. Idemque promotor rite constitutus in virum clarissimum Hermanum Van Rompuy. Unum de Europee unitatis auctoribus, societatisque totius Europe sodalem, humaniore cultu excellentissimum, hominem doctissimum, illustrissimum, honestissimum, quide gentis sue omniumque Europearum gentium consensu optime meritus est. Universitatis Lodziensis senatus auctoritate, doctoris honoris causa, nomen et honores, iura et privilegia contulimus, in eiusque rei fidem hasse literas, Universitatis Sigilio sanciendas curavimus. Datum Lodzie, die 12 mensis Mai, anno bis millesimo vicessimo. Promotor atque decanus, rector magnificus.
I hereby confer upon you the title of Doctor Honoris Causa of the University of Łódź, thereby accepting you into the academic community of our university. I am delighted that the university has such an eminent person among its honorary doctorates. On behalf of the Senate and myself, I would like to congratulate you and wish you all the best in your future endeavors and every success in your personal life. I would like to kindly ask President Herman Van Rompuy, Doctor Honoris Causa of the University of Łódź, to take the floor.
Madam Rector, Mr. Dean, it's really a great privilege for me to become an honorary doctor of this great university here today. It will most probably be my last honorary doctorate in my life. And this ceremony is also unique for another reason. I hope I will be the last online laureate in the long history of the university. Madam Rector, Mr. Dean, I hope to see you soon in person. Ladies and gentlemen, the core concepts of the Union 70 years ago were peace, reconciliation, freedom, the single market. What are the key words today in that other world, even in that other civilization in which we live? I would add, what are the words we should be using? First of all, unity. Unity remains more important than ever. We showed with 27 member states after the Brexit referendum how we formed one bloc. The United Kingdom could not negotiate with Paris and Berlin. The latter did not even want to. For 4 years, there was one negotiator on behalf of 440 million Europeans. It is often said that if one country does not want to cooperate, then the Union is divided. But when it comes to sanctions against Russia and China, we take the necessary unanimous decisions. Without unity, there can be no geopolitical role. Both go together. The 27 member states are sovereign countries, entitled to defend their national interests. But there is also a higher European interest, and both can coincide. The European Council of Heads of State or Government must work on this symbiosis. Compromise is part of the very essence of the Union. Anyone entering the meeting room of the European Council knows they have to reach an agreement. And we are still succeeding. During my mandate, I heard countless times that the Eurozone and thus the European Union would fall apart. It did not happen. And one reason is that there remains a deep political will to preserve and deepen the European project. Without that conviction, nothing is possible in the long run. The Union has had a very difficult time since 2008, when the so-called multiple crises broke out. And one crisis followed another, most of which had an external, a non-European cause, but had a major impact on the Union itself. And yet, the European caravan continued to move forward, even without the United Kingdom. I do not know what the future will bring for the world. In our interdependent world, the crisis of one is also the crisis of the other. And we have known this since the financial crisis and certainly since the pandemic. In terms of climate too, we are in the same storm worldwide. In the world, we are not often in the same boat. In the Union, we are. And that is called solidarity. But solidarity, too, is a verb. So my second word is precisely solidarity. After unity. We already showed it during the Eurozone crisis. Of course, it was in the interest of all Euro countries that Greece remained a member. But there was more to it than just the defense of interests. Not everything is economics, although economics is in everything. In politics, as in personal life, there is a mix of ideals and interests. And that's why we helped countries to remain members of the monetary union. And by the way, in every European budget, there are transfers to a number of countries that are less prosperous than the rest to help them to catch up, which also happened. Sometimes that is annually about 2 to 4% of their GDP. And that is the de facto solidarity that Robert Schuman talked about on the 9th of May, 1950. But recently, the Recovery Fund, as large as 5% of the Union's GDP, is also a huge demonstration of solidarity with the countries most affected by the pandemic. The joint procurement of vaccines is also a strong example of solidarity. Larger member states could have obtained enough vaccines in any case, but smaller ones could not. And we decided to do it together. We do not do, like the UK and the US, own vaccines for our own people. Initially, things were a bit slower in the European Union because of that. But we will have administered more vaccines to the adult population by the beginning of July than the United States. I would add that we have considerably fewer casualties than the US and the UK. In terms of solidarity with those countries that, due to their geographical location, have far more asylum seekers and refugees than other countries, a number of countries are failing badly. Solidarity with people in one's own circle or one's own country is much easier than with those who are further away. That kind of solidarity requires an effort, a transcending of one's own ego. After unity and solidarity, a third key word is sovereignty, in the sense of European sovereignty. In the language of the Union, this is translated as strategic autonomy. Today's world is governed less and less by rules and treaties, but by brute force. In France, there is a well-known saying, "You are legally wrong because you are politically in minority." Ladies and gentlemen, the multilateral order was rules-based. Today, it is mostly paid lip service too. Yet multilateralism has made us highly interdependent, and globalization has exactly that characteristic. But there are limits to this interdependence. And during this corona crisis, we discovered that in certain strategic areas, we have become too dependent. I'm thinking of medical equipment and medicines. I'm thinking of the digital and everything related to it, from rare raw materials to chips, so important for the electronic devices and cars. The European Union had already realized in the Trump era that we had to rely more on ourselves in the area of defense. The goal of becoming climate neutral by 2050 will also make us much less dependent on fossil fuels, and therefore also on Russian gas. We must also do more to protect our own external borders, especially in the Mediterranean. The Union will also not allow its strategic economic sectors to simply fall into the hands of non-EU companies and non-EU countries. The list of excessive dependencies is long. However, the European Union does not want to fall into protectionism. And that is why it wants free and fair trade in line with the WTO rules. And that is why the Union wants to fight against trade distortions caused by state subsidies. In recent years and in recent months, the European Commission has launched numerous initiatives. The time of naivety is over. But as I said, the Union is not a fortress. I give you an example. We exported almost as many doses of vaccines produced in our countries as we kept for ourselves. Ladies and gentlemen, the best way to be economically sovereign is to be competitive. And that requires an effort on the part of each member state to be forward-looking. And it requires a concerted effort. In the global economy, scale matters. Size matters. Even large European companies are often too small on the world market. And also in scientific research, institutes and universities, they have to join forces. The European budget and the Recovery Fund provide new financial opportunities for all this. The Union itself imposes standards on its own market that can dominate the world in terms of climate, in terms of working conditions and privacy. Companies that are active on our territory must also pay taxes here. This has nothing to do with protectionism, but with guaranteeing a level playing field, in guaranteeing justice. A fourth key word is democracy. The former fascist and communist countries found refuge from dictatorship in the European Union. The Union itself is built on the rule of law. A union without respect for this makes no sense. Then it would only be an economic club. And in such a club, there is no common destiny. Democracy is under pressure in the European Union and in the West at large. The attack on Capitol Hill in Washington is a good example of what it leads to when democracy is not seen as a value in itself, but as an instrument to gain and to keep power. Above power, there is the law. And above the law, there are ethics. Above any national law are the European values. Democracy must also achieve results to remain credible. It has to protect people from all kinds of threats, such as unemployment, job insecurity, climate change, corruption and fraud, inequalities, terrorism, foreign aggression, etc. Democracy must deliver in all these areas. But democracy, like the European idea, needs defenders. Defenders, especially among political and intellectual leaders. I repeat that democracy is a value in itself. It cannot live in a negative climate. Democracy is dialogue. Democracy is conversation. Of course, politics is a struggle for power, but we need a framework of respect for each other, listening to each other, of renunciation of one's own rightness, of self-relativization. In short, the opposite of a culture of polarization and demonization. Madam Rector, Mr. Dean, professors, ladies and gentlemen, what we defend inwardly within the Union, we also defend outwardly and vice versa. So in foreign policy too, we cannot remain silent about human rights and human dignity. Other global actors must get used to this. This does not mean that we only cooperate economically and ecologically with like-minded countries. We must be clear about our principles and at the same time always be prepared to engage in dialogue with others for the sake of our own interests and of the general good of mankind. I am thinking in particular of the climate. And that's why we must continue to work towards stronger global governance. The less the time is ripe, the more we must do to make it ripe. In this world where old and new global actors are looking for their place, the European Union as a sovereign entity has allies with whom it shares values and interests, though not all the time and not the same ones. For the European Union, the US and China are not at all equidistant. The fifth word is culture. Of course, in Europe, as elsewhere on our planet, we have not always sufficiently controlled human nature's brutality by culture. And the saddest are the wars, from the barbaric 30 Years' War in the 17th century to the Holocaust. And Poland's own history is one of the most tragic in Europe. None of this has prevented the uniqueness of European culture, which is philosophy going back to the Greek thinkers, with Christianity, of course, with its architecture, art, and music. In the midst of suffering, we have continued to search for truth, goodness, and beauty. In times of confusion like these, one must return to the core questions. Aristotle did this when he asked what the essence of life was. His answer was, and I'm quoting him, to serve others and to do the good. I'm asking, is that a dream? But ladies and gentlemen, without dreams, only wilderness and hell await us. By the way, the motto of this university is Veritas et Libertas, truth and freedom. The journey of seeking is never over. The quest can only take place in a spirit of freedom. Thoughts are free. Our universities played and are playing a major role in this. And this university is relatively young, but it is part of a great European tradition of centers of thought and research. Polish academic traditions date back to the 14th century, and some of Europe's oldest universities can be found in this country, in Poland. Madam Rector, Mr. Dean, professors, students, ladies and gentlemen, Europe must be the synthesis of the old and the new, of the best of the old and the best of the new. A Europe that is rooted, a Europe that has learned from history, and a Europe that always remains hopeful. Thank you so much for the great honor you are conveying to me today. Thank you for this moving ceremony. And really, I hope to see you soon in person, as soon as possible. Thank you again.
Mr. President, thank you very much for your speech. Thank you so much. Wysoki Senacie, Szanowni Państwo, uroczyste obchody 76. rocznicy powstania Uniwersytetu Łódzkiego w dniu dzisiejszym dobiegają końca. Bardzo proszę o odtworzenie pieśni Gaude Mater Polonia.